For the past few months, I've been creating a mind map of the entire One Piece world building. I started with a blank page, or rather a black wall, and shared all the arc of the East Blue Saga with you in previous videos. Now it's time to take a tour of everything I've compiled so far. Welcome to the world of One Piece. In the geography section, the most important picture is the world map, showing the ground line and the red line, which separate the four seas. So far we only heard of the East Blue. We have gathered quite a bit of information about the ground line, the sea route where the One Piece and the most dangerous pirates are. It is the place Gold Roger once ruled and is referred by some as paradise. Above all, it is the destination we are aiming for and the location of Fishman Island. The red line is the continent that encircles the globe, dividing the ocean in two and intersecting the ground line at a right angle. There is a city at the center of the red line, though we don't know yet what it means. Of the four seas, we currently only know the East Blue. It is where the adventure began and is the calmest of the four. It is home to Arlong Park, Locktown, and a few other islands we visited but which are unnamed in the canon. I included a picture of Arlong Park, though I might remove it later. A final card I wanted to include covers places whose locations are currently unknown or which belong to the realm of legend. All Blue is the primary example. Fishman Island was also in this category before we learned it was located on the Grand Line. For the biology section, I divided the content into three parts: fauna, flora, and people. The fauna section is split into two categories: on animals, whose picture I need to curate. We learned that there are giant creatures and cases of unusual biology, and that animals can display high intelligence and understand humans. This is a noteworthy aspect that will continue to feature in the story. I also added a card for sea monsters. We've seen several examples of them, since they are a unique feature of the One Piece world and the Grand Line, and we are likely to encounter them again. There is nothing in the flora section yet, and I'll probably move the card, but I thought it was interesting to include it for comparison with the fauna. The people section covers the various types of human we'll encounter. This card simply summarizes humans with distinctive traits, things like Buggy's nose, Sanji's eyebrows, Usopp's nose, hair growing in the shape of ear, and so on. Another example is Sanji, who appears to be resistant to fire. The first non-human race we encountered is the Fishmen during the Arlong Park arc, which introduced us to their many unique characteristics. I have two examples pictured because there is a great deal of physical variation among individuals. There isn't much information yet in the technology and magic section. The core magic system revolves around devil fruits, which grants power, Luffy's and Buggy's fruits being the first examples. Since this is clearly the story's primary magic system, it has its own dedicated card that will need to be fleshed out later. The abilities section covers traits that aren't quite standard skills but don't come from devil fruits. Those represent other forms of magic, narratively speaking. I wanted to highlight specifics on weapons, since this is a battle shonen after all, and following this I made a dedicated card for blades, a topic heavily features in Lockdown with the Rose's new sword. The other two cards cover different categories of technology. For medicine, I plan to include only information that differs from real-world medical practices. Then there's snail technology, which, while somewhat a running gag, remains interesting. The history section contains many cards. It's actually the biggest part of the mind map, so I'll present it in two parts. First, the narrator commentary, because the narrator has made predictions that came true in the subsequent chapters, and trend that continued throughout the series. I also have a card for quotes. The only one included so far is Gold Roger's statement during his execution at Locktown in chapter 100, which I consider crucial for understanding the work. However, more will be added, including quotes from figures who never actually appeared in the story. The second part covers mythology and legends, specifically tales told within the One Piece world that don't align with real-world legends. Naturally, this begins with the One Piece itself, the story's central legend. I've included quite a bit regarding Usopp's lies, and they have an uncanny tendency to turn out to be true. There's also another card currently featuring only the people eating ogresses that, to my knowledge, doesn't correlate to any existing folktale. The history section covers historical facts. So far I've focused mainly on the pirate era triggered by Gold Roger's execution. This period was launched 22 years ago by his death. It is the series starting point, and I feel it's important to clearly visualize it as the marker for the beginning of this historical era. I've also listed several events known to have occurred during the pirate era, the incidents involving Quo and Arlong, as well as the moments Belmer found Nojiko and Nami. The current events section focuses on things that have happened within the story timeline, which I believe will be significant moving forward, such as Morgan's arrest, Kobe joining the Marines, Buggy leaving Orange Town, and Arlong being stopped. I've included the coup d'etat in Villa, revealed in the newspaper, and Luffy's first bounty, that marked the moment his reputation began to spread across the world. Finally, I've noted Smoker and Buggy's decision to head to the Grand Line, since we'll likely encounter them there. The society section covers quite a bit of ground. There is a border card regarding society, such as the use of berries as currency, the placing of bounties on criminals, the existence of slavery, something I hadn't expected to discover as early as the first chapter, and the fact that order on the Grand Line is maintained by 3 specific groups, which we'll discuss later. Next, I have a section on the Marines. It covers general aspects like the reverse hand salute and the specific use of prosthetic limbs that doubles as weapons, something I mentioned during the Barati arc. The structure section details the headquarters, the various ranks, and what marine bases look like. I also created a card I consider very important regarding misconduct, since the story often portrays Marines as lacking integrity. I've listed all the examples of this we've encountered so far. Then there's a section on pirates, covering several elements. The title of King of the Pirates, held only by Gold Roger, distinct from the historical figure mentioned earlier. The 7 Warlords of the Sea, the first group maintaining order on the Grand Line, of whom we've heard about 2 so far. And Shanks, a pirate of great renown, according to Usopp, introduced in the very first chapter, who therefore deserves his own card. Finally, I created a card during the Arlong Park arc to discuss pirate philosophies and behaviors that seem important for the future, such as the concept of supremacy and the tribute demanded by Arlong. To wrap up, there is a group we know little about, the world government, located on the Grand Line. It doesn't seem particularly concerned with events elsewhere. We do know, however, that it controlled the Marines through the Commander-in-Chief. Looking at the map in its current state, there are a few things that surprised me compared to when I first started the project. For instance, I didn't expect to have so much material in the history section. I had the impression that aspect would develop later, but we already have quite a bit of information regarding legends and foreshadow for the narrator, which seems like key elements. It's similar for the society section. We already have a lot of information on the various types of pirates. Even though the Marine and the world government are already established as the primary antagonist, I expect this section to expand further down the line. As for geography, we mostly have the basics for now. However, since we are heading toward the Grand Line, I don't expect much details on the 4 seas, aside from East Blue where we started. That's the general picture. Regarding biology, I also expected something more extensive at this stage. In the end though, we have a fair amount of information on animals, specifically that they exhibit human-like behavior, and more importantly, details on fishmen, the first non-human race to encounter. In the technology and magic section, I expected to have a bit less material at this point. Devil fruits were the main focus for a long time, but other elements were added gradually. I created separate cards for topics, even though I have limited information. Partly because I anticipate gathering more details later, and partly because the subjects are distinct enough that grouping them together didn't make sense to me. That covers the tour. I'll do another statute update like this one at the end of the next saga. Thanks for watching this video all the way through. I hope this tour of the map offers a fresh perspective alongside what I've already published. Preparation for the Alabasta saga are well underway, and I'll be resuming arc by arc videos next month. Feel free to share your expectations for what's coming next in the comments and let me know what stood out for you.